Welcome to the City Movement Podcast. Here at the City Movement, we are passionate about planting churches and YMCAs. So today you'll hear us talk about the YMCA, the local church, and the benefits of the Church YMCA partnership. We're your hosts, Jeff Snyder and Mike Newman. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Welcome back into the City Movement Podcast. This is Jeff Snyder. I'm here with Mike Newman and Dave Newman, the one, the only Dave Newman, rejoining the podcast.
Good to be here.
We are so glad you've joined us, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on a podcast platform. We're here with Season 4.
Season 4.
Yeah.
Come on.
Boom.
Let's do it.
Little fist bumps all around.
How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing good.
Yeah?
Hey, happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, just to put it in context.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, it's time to start the Christmas music.
Give me one highlight of your Thanksgiving weekend. 20 seconds or less. Go.
Yes. You go first.
Eggnog.
Eggnog.
It begins. Yeah.
I was telling Mike off air, we cut down the perfect Christmas tree.
Did you really?
It's 8.5 feet tall, Douglas fir. It's like the perfect shape. It's so full, smells like a Christmas tree for $75.
$75.
Wow.
And that's a steal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Mm.
I think I have a low light of my Thanksgiving weekend, which is both the Buckeyes, we're filming this from Ohio, lost to Michigan, and with even more great regret and pain, my Auburn Tigers lost on a 4th and 30 last second to Bama. And so I'm still sad about it. I'm still football sad.
You know what helps?
Tell me.
Eggnog.
Christmas trees?
Christmas trees and
Yeah.
eggnog.
Yep. Auburn really blew it.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
They blew it.
They sure did.
They blew it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
But it's a good thing this isn't a sports podcast, or we would be sad the whole time.
That's right.
It's
Right?
true.
Well, let's jump into it.
Let's jump
shall
in.
we? Yeah. come
Yeah,
on.
so
Give it
Season
to
4, we're coming back in and we're going to talk about church planting. But even before we do that, it's been a while since we recorded. It's almost the end of 2023. We just wanted to give a quick update for anyone that wasn't able to attend. We, almost 2 months ago now, had the 2023 Christian Mission Conference in Silver Bay, New York. It was a gathering of probably 75 or 80 YMCA employees and church pastors, church planters, people
17
involved in
different
churches.
states.
Yeah, people
Yeah.
from all over the place.
Yeah.
You guys want to give any sort of small highlight from it or anything like that?
I have to say it's awesome anytime, partners in the battlefield all get together from all over the place and you just hear the stories of what God's doing. You hear joys and sorrows and you just walk together in this mission field.
Yeah.
So it always fills me up to do it.
Yeah, it was fruitful. There's some great conversations, similar. Some guys on different spectrums of church planting. Some just about to start and really excited. Some in the middle of it, and discouraged. Some towards the tail end of it, looking back and have learned a ton. And so I would say there's a great wealth of knowledge, experience. It was good.
Yeah.
It was a good time.
Yeah, I'll give two highlights. One, it was super warm. So we got to spend some time on the lake in upstate New York in October,
Yeah, that was awesome.
which does not happen very often.
Mm-hmm.
And then second highlight, for the second straight year, someone came with one of their YMCAs and gave their life to Jesus at the Silver Bay Conference.
That's awesome.
That's way better than eggnog.
Yeah. And
that
Christmas
is.
trees.
Yes.
And Auburn losing.
Yes.
But and to even preview next year, there's going to be world leaders literally coming from every continent to that YMCA conference. First week of October, Silver Bay. So next year, it's going to be special.
It'll be great.
Yeah, put it on your calendars. It's going to be great. Okay, but Season 4, we're back in, and what we're talking about is church planting and the stages of church planting. And I would even, just to kick that off, would even say, we've seen it happening right here locally in Cincinnati recently.
Yeah.
I would say even in the last year, probably, we have 3 different churches in different stages of the planting process reaching out to us and saying, what does it look like to plant a church in a YMCA?
Mm-hmm.
And so we wanted to just record a season of what does it look like to plant a church? What are the different steps? What are the different stages of planting a church? We just had someone reach out this week on the east side of Cincinnati and say, I want to plant a church in the YMCA over here. Can you get me in contact with someone? How do we go about doing it? We're walking with a guy in Blue Ash, which is in Cincinnati, a guy in Dayton planting a church in these different stages and these different whys. And so we thought it would be good to talk about what does it look like, no matter what city, what country you're in? What does it look like to plant a church in a YMCA, and how do you go about the different stages of church planting specific to the Y? So today we're introing that, and we're going to spend the rest of the season kind of going through what that looks like.
That's right.
That's great.
Yeah, and steps, not to interpret that as blueprinting, taking one thing that worked or didn't work in this part of the country and just saying, here are the 10 steps that you have to do in order for a successful.
It's not a formula.
And so we're gonna use the illustration of soils, of farming, and how to assess different soils, how to prepare different soils, and what does it look like ultimately to be a part of or pursue harvesting in that field. And so
lucky for us, we have
a farmer
in
we
the
have a
room.
farmer. Come on.
Wow.
Yes.
Mhm.
So I have been a pastor for about almost 25 years, but this last year I have become a farmer as well.
We are farmers.
Well done.
Well done.
Yep.
Come on, give it to
Yeah,
us.
no thanks. I
I have an
am the
embarrassed
much
face
more
on right now.
mature brother. So this last couple years, my wife and I bought this big plot of land. You guys know this, but Ashley has had this passion to plant a lavender field.
Yeah,
that's cute.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know what lavender is, I didn't really. It's just this big purple, beautiful like plants that have all kinds of like, I don't know. If you research lavender, it's just like
Mike likes
awesome
lavender
for
in
you.
his iced lattes.
Yes. Is that true?
I mean, that's fine.
Lavender infused smells, everything. Anyways, so she has had this longing to do a lavender field in this basically this 5-acre field that we have. And so we're like, all right, we're going to go for it. And so what do you do? What do you do to plant lavender? And so I'm going to give you 5 different steps of just like a story that we've learned. And this will set us up for 5 different like podcast talks of what it means to have a harvest in ministry. Okay, so here's how the story goes. We want to plant lavender, and we called around and said, well, what do you do? What are the steps? And the first thing that everybody said was, it actually starts with your soil. You have got to assess the soil. You got to test the soil to see what will grow in your region, what will grow there. And so, we didn't start by throwing something in the ground. We started by taking these samples to send them off to like these, testing scientist people to say, do we have enough nutrients? Do we have enough nitrogen? Do we have enough phosphorus, which we didn't?
Oh, no.
And so do you know what you do when you don't have enough phosphorus?
You go to a phosphorus store.
Mm-hmm.
You mix in chicken turd, which you actually have to buy bags of it, which we bought bags, probably 30 bags of chicken poop, mixed up in these little granulars, to which we, as we roughed up the soil, had to mix chicken turds into our soil so that it would have enough phosphorus meshed in with enough nitrogen and everything else, so that one day if we even want to plant, the soil is ready to plant.
That is so phosphorus of you.
I've always said there's a lot of value in chicken poop.
Yeah, I mean, it blew my mind that we had to buy bags of it. So in the future, we will get our own chickens anyway. So, okay, so the first thing that we had to do was to assess the soil.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what will grow here? What do we need to add to the soil so that we can have one day a lavender harvest? So then the second thing we did is we had to prepare the ground. I didn't know this.
You had to mix in the chicken poop.
Yeah. We had to mix in the chicken poop, but we also had to prepare the ground. So lavender, unlike other plants, I guess, you plant high and dry, meaning you have these rows, all these different rows, and you got to make these like mounds, which we don't own a tractor yet, so we had to do this by hand, where we would make all these rows so that the ground would be prepared so that when we would plant the lavender, it would drain well. We had to mix in other things. We had to, with our hand rakes and everything, rake out weeds and rocks and other things so that, again, the ground would be prepared so that it could be planted.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions or anything?
I mean, this is so elementary for farmer people, but I'm sure
Yeah.
it's like super fascinating for us
Yeah.
people who aren't
Yeah, it's big time,
planting a whole lot.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So assess the soil, prepare the ground,
Mhm.
and then it was planting time. So Ashley and I drive up with trucks and picked up 650 lavender plants.
Yeah.
All right, because it was time to plant. So we came back from Michigan, put it in the ground.
How big was each lavender plant?
Oh, not very big at all. Like
A couple inches?
yeah, like a couple inches tall, a couple inches wide.
Okay.
Just these little. She calls them her little baby lavender plants. And so we had to put them. We had to put them like. We had to put down weed mat. We had to put them like 4 feet apart. We had to mix in like pea gravel because again it's supposed to stay dry. Like, how do you plant in such a way to set it up
Mhm.
to grow? Okay, so then
So
and
you
now
assess the ground, you
Assess the
tended the
soil.
soil,
assess the ground, prepare the soil, planting,
planted. Okay.
or planting seeds. That'll
Yeah.
set us up for a future conversation. How to plant seeds. And then once things are planted, once things are taking root, you go through this process of tending and cultivating and weeding and just watering and all the things to set it up as it's planted, as it's rooted, so that it would grow until ultimately, which we're far from this yet, but there will be a mighty
There will be
lavender
a mighty harvest.
There will be
Sure.
rows of lavender beyond words. So again, think about those things of what
And
it means. And then I don't
You'll
know.
have lavender.
Then we'll have lavender. Yeah, praise the Lord.
And what do you do with 5 acres of lavender?
I do not know the answer to that question,
Great.
Oh, I love
but
it.
we will get there. So again, think through those steps of assessing the soil, preparing the ground, planting seeds, tending and cultivating, and then a harvest time.
Mhm.
And I think that we would say things that we've seen in ministry are natural stages, natural progressions, natural steps to walk through. Certainly, there's going to look different in every situation, but I think it'll be helpful to talk through each of these.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And now let me give just one disclaimer as we go, and we're gonna look at Matthew 9 in a second and just kind of root this biblically a little bit. But again, if you've listened to our podcasts, like this is something that's known. But we're starting with this assumption that it's actually churches that are saying we view the YMCA as a mission field, as the well of the community, as a place that we actually want to engage in long-term ministry.
Mhm.
I like a phrase I've been using lately is that we're giving our yes until, meaning God, you have our full yes. We are here until you were to call us to a different place. But that's a different starting point from a church that says we need the cheapest rent, best place possible. We'll go there, and it's going to be quick until we're out of the YMCA into really what the vision of our church is, which is to build wherever we would be. But we don't have this passion to connect with the YMCA.
Mhm. Jeff, have you seen that or had any conversations with guys like that?
With guys that have a heart that want to plant in the YMCA and dwell in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I would say
Mhm.
the people that we're walking and talking with in Cincinnati right now that are wanting to plant in Dayton and Blue Ash are both churches that are saying we want to be in the Y because it's the well of the community, and we
Mhm.
want to plant a church among the lost.
Yeah.
Which is a slightly different outlook on church than maybe a style of church, which we wouldn't say it's necessarily wrong or
Yeah.
bad, but different than maybe a come and see style of church that
Yeah.
would say we want to build a place and create an atmosphere that is going to bring people in from the community to our church building.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just on the phone this morning with a YMCA church planter in England, and he was saying, and he's putting churches and YMCAs in England, and he was like, it's really not so much a Sunday-centric thing, is it? Like, it's really not so much a how can you get the greatest performance, church show, gathering people into your building for that, but it's a different kind of mindset. It's like, how do you love and engage with a community? And do you believe that the YMCA is the gathering point of that community?
Yeah. In like missionary terms, they would just call it a people group. They would do demographics on that people group, learn the demographics, and then go to them.
Yep.
And so you're right. That come and see language
Yeah.
is a mindset shift.
Yeah.
When it comes to planting in the Y.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just to prepare everyone for this season, it might be a little bit. These stages might be a little bit slower and a little bit counterintuitive to what your natural inclination of planting a church would be. We've seen people in our church planting movement be like, I want to plant a church in a YMCA. Step one, billboards, signs, posters, because we've come and we're starting the service tomorrow. And if that's your natural inclination, this might press against it just a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I've shared even with our church some regret of use of language, in that we called it, there's nothing wrong with it or sinful in terms of a first Sunday, but we called it a launch Sunday. I've shared this before, but it's got those overtones of NASA, rockets, launchers, big smoke, and the whole community coming out to see something grand and glorious.
Yeah.
And there's embedded in that this idea that people are banging on the doors, frothing at the mouth, excited for you to go in. But actually, our gospel would say differently.
Yeah.
That we're rebellious. We don't necessarily want that.
Yeah.
And so we got to go out with the message to the people. And so
it's good.
Honestly, if I showed up on a Sunday morning and there were people banging on the doors and frothing at the mouth, waiting to get in, I would have real questions.
Yeah.
I can't wait. Oh,
The froth is really what would get
Sure.
me. I don't know if I would go in.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, so you're saying, so we got 5 stages of church planting.
Yeah.
We're going to look at these 5 stages. We're
Yeah.
going to talk about assessing the soil, preparing the ground,
Yeah.
planting seeds, tending,
Yeah.
and harvest. But you're even saying, before you even jump into that, there are things to consider and ask yourself as a church or as a church planter.
Yeah.
Am I willing to, or is my approach to church planting one that we've seen thrive in the Y?
Yeah.
Because if it's not, then there might be questions of, are you going to be like on a square peg, round hole? Is this going to work?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right, Jeff.
Yeah.
It's just, do you have a love for your community through this platform of the YMCA? Like, are you willing to say, this is my community, I love it, and I'm in. I want to be in here, not just renting a room. We've talked about this before. But do you want to be a church in the YMCA?
Yeah.
And so I would just say, and before we're done today, we'll just do a quick preview of each of those 5. But it'd be awesome to just start this whole thing with a prayer request from Jesus, and how we want to be an answer to a prayer request by Jesus. So, Jeff, would you read Matthew 9 for us? Matthew 9:35-38. We'll just talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it. So Matthew 9:35. And Jesus went throughout all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every disease and every affliction. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest."
Yeah, that's awesome. When I think of this text, I don't know if this is exactly how it happened, but I know that paragraph comes after all these different ministry responsibilities that Jesus and his disciples were doing.
Yeah.
And I picture, it said they went to all the cities, all the villages, preaching, healing, care. And I just see this, almost like this exhausted people pouring out, people. And then here they are, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I picture it almost at the end of the day, and the disciples and Jesus are standing there, and they look out, and the crowds are coming to them. And I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that. I am peopled out, and I don't got anything left kind of feeling. But the feeling that Jesus had there, you remember what he said? He said,
He has compassion on them.
yeah. Mike, do you know the Greek word for compassion?
I know the meaning of it.
What is it?
Where it affects the very bowels, the
Yeah.
innards.
Yeah, it's like this visceral,
Yes.
emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I only have it in my head because I was just studying it, but it's the word splagnismi, which is like this, your emotions, guts, everything. You just hurt. He like saw all the people and he was just compassionate. And then he gives us our harvest. Like this farming metaphor isn't from us. It's coming from Jesus. So Jesus says, there is a harvest and it's plentiful. And so let's put this in Y lingo. There are 14,000 YMCAs that are the gathering points of every major city and even minor city in the world. Okay, there's a harvest that's plentiful, but the laborers are few. Okay, and so Jesus then says, I've got a prayer request. And I just think of all the times we gather in our little church prayer groups and everyone goes around and says, here's my prayer request. Here's my prayer request. Here's the prayer request of Jesus. He says, this harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Pray that my laborers would go into the harvest field. Or the way I had a mentor that used to say, Jesus had this angst because the laborers are in the farmhouse and the crops are dying in the field. He's like, pray that my people would come out of the farmhouse into the field because there's a harvest and he wants us to be farmers in the field. So that is emotional for me to think about. And I just want to be like, of all the things, like let's be a prayer request answered to Jesus. Let's plant churches that are not, and I don't mean this in any kind of disparaging way, but the primal like passion of our church is not to gather more believers into the farmhouse. Okay? But to take the laborers in our farmhouse and to go into the field. So the field of the YMCA, this is what we're going to be talking about for 5 or 6 weeks. How to assess the soil. Just any thoughts jump in your mind real quick? If we were to take one man on each of these, how to assess the soil?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general it takes presence. And so I had a guy call from Miami, Florida, and my counsel to him was, why don't you join? Why don't you join the Y? Start getting to know the staff, getting to know the front desk ladies, the person in charge of membership, and start asking the questions of, what's the Lord doing here? Hey, do you see the Lord working? And anything that I can do or anything I can serve. We've got a friend out in the Pacific Northwest where a Y was built. He was looking to plant a church, didn't necessarily know that the Y was going to be it. But he just said, hey, I'd love to just be a part and serve. Can I fold towels and wipe down machines? And that really set him up for a ministry among people. Because what we're talking about is people. The Y is people, not not the gym and swim that it's coined with, and not just the facility. But what are we assessing? And it's the people that we're meeting and talking about.
It even just crossed my mind as you talked about that illustration there with our Pacific Northwest friend, that it's almost like that second category of preparing the ground because trust was earned. Like his trust and character, it was earned, where as he does ministry, people will look to him. And I think we're going to look at other ways to prepare the soil so that seeds can be planted. You got anything in mind?
No, I mean, on prepare, I think that's, assessing and preparing, I think, are very closely related. Even in your farming story, it's like you assessed the soil and the assessment told you needed phosphorus. So part of preparing the ground was adding phosphorus. So it's like they're so closely linked to each other. So I think like it's kind of like when you join the Y, when you get involved, you're assessing what's already happening here. Where is God already moving? Where are people open to my message? If you would use like a person of peace lingo in there.
Totally.
And then part of preparing the ground is connecting with those people, earning trust, connecting. We'll get very specific, I would assume, on the actual podcast, connecting with the executive director or the CEO of the Y, and them seeing you as a advocate and supporter of the Y.
We'll talk about learning the languages of the Y. How the soil is prepared as you're volunteering, as you're giving to their initiatives, as you're helping in the things that they're already doing, and just how there are certain very tangible things that we can do to prepare the soil that'll make those seeds bloom.
Yeah.
And then planting seeds. How are we going to plant seeds in ministry? Any thoughts at the top of our mind in the YMCA?
Yeah, I mean, well, the seed is scripture in Mark
Yeah.
4,
Yeah.
and so I think that immediately evokes a nervousness from the audience of maybe the worst thing to think about would be like a Bible bashing Christian, but like in what ways can we salt our speech? In what ways can we speak plain gospel application to everyday stuff of life? And so when we're in the weight room, I mean, just on Monday, I was talking to a guy in the weight room about what it looks like to look to the Lord out of depression. And I was doing squats and he was doing deadlifts, and we're meeting in the middle and talking about depression and offering scripture to that. So that's that's seed. Obviously more programmatic ways, you can assess your why, and if it's got a spiritual climate of warmth to the things of God, would be like, are there verses up, or is the Christian mission statement up, or so instead of like crystals and things hanging, what I mean? So
I mean, we'll talk about like looking at the felt needs of that community and planting seeds of like a class that could meet that, like if it's a YMCA filled with all these little kids and parents, maybe a parenting class,
or a VBS,
or VBS. We'll talk about this is the great this is the moment of the major seed, or maybe even the major tree. Like, this is the place where you put a service right now, and then that'll be one of the big multiplying things. And you'll see that comes in our experience after you've assessed the soil and prepared the ground. But that'll be the major seed.
So we've got assess, prepare, plant. We have like 2 minutes left. So why don't you give us like 30 seconds on?
So
tend,
nurturing, weeding,
harvest.
harvesting. How do you like establish relationships, build trust, join things that will have longevity? We had a church planter who's just about to plant a church. They've already invited him on the board. I've been on the board here for about 17 years. It's just this nurturing, cultivating trust, and we'll talk about all kinds of things. And then, finally, the harvest moment, when 14,000 lighthouses called the YMCA shine bright for Jesus. And it's a moment that there's harvest moments that local churches have, and then there's the great harvest moment that we will look to one day, when every knee will bow and tongue confess that He's Lord. And we're going to just lean our life into the harvest moments of raising up this movement of lighthouses all over the world. So we'll have fun with that.
Can I ask one closing question for us here? I think this is an important question, so think about an answer. We have, I don't know, millions of followers, probably, listening to our podcast. Would you say that's about right?
Yeah, probably.
Not all of them are church planters.
Yeah.
Not all of them are people that are a part of a church that's planting. So how would you answer the question of like, why do I care about this? Someone who's just a member of a YMCA church right now, or maybe a staff member at a Y. Why would they even care to listen to these podcast episodes?
You want to go?
Oh, sure. I mean, I really have never met a Christian that has said, I'm not interested in being used by God. Like, really, every believer that I've ever met has always said, yes, I want my life to count for Jesus Christ. I want my time here on earth to be fruitful for the kingdom. I want to be used. And so I would say if you're a believer, if you're a Y staff member who's a Christ follower, if you're a member of a church in a Y, that your ears should perk up to be like, okay, here are some ways that that I'm called to live out my life beyond just sitting in a pew and then going home.
Yeah.
And so there's what are the pathways to be used to reach the lost?
Yeah.
That's good.
And so being at a church that's in a Y, the people group is elevated to be right in your face.
Yeah.
And so it's very much so apparent. Am I going to take part in this great commission of reaching people?
Yeah.
Or am I, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so for us, that experience of being a church in a Y is very much so a mirror when it comes to evangelism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A litmus test in how we're doing.
I would just add to that in similar vein, but I've heard it said, this is one of our YMCA church planters that said, a church is a family on mission together. And I think every follower of Jesus is called to be a part of a family, and something comes alive when you're like, I'm part of a family that is on mission together. That, you know, here we just left Thanksgiving, and something about a family, like a literal family that cooks together and then eats together and then cleans together, and like you want to be a part of something that's bigger than just show up and get a meal. You are part of the mission.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I would even say, this is kind of what you were saying, but these stages that I think we're going to talk about, yes, we can talk about them from a church and a church planner.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could also look at them as your own personal evangelism ministry of assessing the soil and preparing someone's heart, planting seeds.
Yeah.
You know, this, I think you can talk about this in the granular level as the way that you think about it in your own personal life too.
Yeah.
In terms of your involvement with the Y and how you're getting involved with people groups within the Y and different groups in the Y. So I think you can look at it all kinds of different levels. So,
Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
No.
Okay.
Great conversation.
Great startup, guys.
Chicken poop,
Mhm.
farmers, harvest,
Season 4.
Jesus.
Sports misery.
God is good.
That's right.
All right. Well, for Mike and David Newman, this is Jeff Snyder. That was the City Movement Podcast.